Ji, Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Ginai Sahib. Welcome to Sights and Sounds of Pakistan. Please, could you introduce yourself with your name?
Yes, my name is Javed. My father's name was Asghar, so he was attached to my name. And just like all the Indians and Pakistanis, I have a family name also, and that's Ginai.
Where and when were you born?
I was born in Quetta. Quetta is a city, very well-known city, very near the Afghanistan border in Pakistan. Balochistan, Suba, Balochistan, province of Balochistan.
Could you share something about the history of your family?
Well, actually, that I'm Kashmiri from origin. My grandfather's father, great grandfather, was a man who used to bring pashmina. That is the shawls made up of from Kashmir, and collect them from inside Kashmir and bring to Gujarat, and then to Sialkot, and then he used to go to Amritsar. And my grandfather, his son, was a doctor, and my father, he did his master from Government College Lahore, and he went to America on a scholarship when the Americans started flirting with the old India. So he was one of those lucky guys who went in the first batch to America, and at that time it was one India.
Acha. Could you share something about your childhood?
Well,
Some good memories.
Good memories and bad memories, yes. Actually, I have a mixed bag of memories of my childhood. I was born in Quetta. I was very young when I was pushed into school by my mother. She's very enthusiastic. And first I went to British school, and because I didn't speak very good English, so after a while, that was the colonial time, they decided to push me out. And so I had to leave the school because I was too slow in picking up the language. Then I went to a normal school, studied there, and I did my intermediate examination in Quetta, and then went to medical college in Lahore. And I stayed in Lahore till I left Pakistan and worked in New Hospital, Lahore.
Did you have a good childhood? I mean, really specific. When you were a child, let's say 4, 5, 6, 7 years old.
Yes.
Some childhood memories.
Yes.
How did you spend your childhood?
Actually, that time, exactly what you are referring to, is the time when India and Pakistan separated from each other. It's the partition time. And that was, there were, just before that, some pleasant memories, but after that period, actually, was not so, comfortable for a child, because I've seen terrible miseries, I've seen murders, I've seen house being burnt, things like that.
How was the situation where you grew up? Did Sikhs and Hindus also reside there, or?
Yes, when I was a very young...
Tell me something about the place where you grew up.
I grew up early part of my life in Quetta. My father's best friend was a Gurdat Singh. He was a lawyer and he was a friend. Both of them migrated left Sialkot, and they came to work in Quetta, one as a lawyer and one as an agriculture expert. He had his master's in agriculture. And they were great friends. And there was a very painful memory when finally we discovered that he had to leave Pakistan.
But you lived in a city, Quetta, right?
I live in city. Quetta was a small city.
Okay.
Total population of about, at that time, 50,000 people.
Okay. How old were you when partition happened?
It was 1947, and I was born in 1939, so I was 9 years old.
9 years old. Where were you when partition happened?
Well, I was actually, my father got his scholarship and he went to America. He was in America. So I lived my grandfather, maternal grandfather, in Delhi. He was employed in Delhi at that time, and that is a time which was not full of any pleasant memories. Although my school was there, I liked my friends. I used to play with them.
So at the time of partition, when everything started happening, you lived in?
I was in Delhi.
You were in Delhi.
Yes,
Okay.
but because my father was in America, my mother moved from one family member to another. She never stayed with one family member. She started from Lahore. She went to to Delhi, and then went to New Delhi where her sister was, and I stayed in all those places, moving around for safety, and where
Okay.
it was safe.
When did you hear about partition? I mean, when did you realize something is happening? And
Well, I just tell you that I actually didn't know much about it. I'd heard the word, but I didn't understand what it meant. Finally, when it was nearing the time when we really separated, then it's a very terrible misery, because when I was Delhi, some places were burning. We could see the fire, and the night was light, and everybody said that it was not safe. So we moved from our house to my uncle Khalu's house, who was at that time, luckily, session judge in Delhi, and that place must be there. I remember the address, 8 Curzon Road, Delhi. I actually lived for a while with them because it was safer. But finally, when my father came, then ultimately I moved to Quetta again.
so during partition, your father came back.
No, soon after partition came, and he
Soon.
realized that India is now divided.
Okay.
Then he left from America, but those days you don't fly.
Okay, I see.
He came with
So-
ship.
Okay, and how did you leave Delhi?
Delhi, actually, we left with a train, and we had heard a lot of stories about massacre, and somehow we were lucky at that time, and we were safe, and we had heard stories of dead bodies in train and things like that. But luckily, I was not confronted with that type of violence.
Okay, but what did you see happening during partition? What can you remember?
Well, I can start from Lahore. It was actually must be 1947 when I was in Lahore, and my uncle, who was actually principal of the veterinary college, so I lived in his house because my mother was moving around with different family members. So one of her younger sister was there. So I was playing outside, and then the most terrible memory I have is a guy who was coming on a bicycle, and he was whistling, I still remember. And then came 2 guys from behind and hit him with a hockey. And I still get panicked. It's not pleasant. And he was not dead, and they pushed him in the gutter. And that tough memories were not singly that one. I saw in Delhi also, I saw in Lahore also. So it's everywhere madness.
How did partition affect you?
Well, it affected my family because my father actually was returning from America after doing his PhD, and he had a job standing for him. It was actually reserved for him as seat specialist to the government of India. So my father didn't take that job because the things were too hot there, unsafe, and he decided to go back to Balochistan. And so I totally stayed in Quetta for a very long time, and my father on the same job for a long time, in spite of the fact that he was getting a very senior job in Delhi. So we had luckily we survived, we were okay, but financially we had a loss.
Do you still have contact with some friends in India?
No, I was too young when my age was too small. I know some of the friends, but I don't know if they're alive or not. But we didn't correspond later because, as a 9-year, 8-year boy, you don't write letters to each other. I very much wished to know how they were. I very much wished how my father's friend was, who was very nice gentleman, Sardarji, Guru Dutt his name was. And we did miss him. I used to call him uncle.
Do you think that it was the right thing that Pakistan did part from India, that partition did happen? What is your opinion about that?
Yes, that used to have a very mixed feelings about it, because I can tell you that when I went to England, the first place I was finding a place to live there with my wife and my daughter. And the first person who held me was a guy from, actually, who lived in Lahore. It was an Indian guy. And he was very nice, and he told me where he lived in Lahore. So it was a very pleasant experience. I lived in England. I had a very comfortable relationship with friends, Indian friends.
Do you have any message for the young generation, Pakistanis and Indians? What would you advise them?
Well, we are neighbors. We had no choice but to be together, not as one country, but as friends. It's not easy, it's easier said. Both nations have to work towards it. I mean, you can't blame Pakistan. Every time there are a lot of people who try to put the blame on Pakistan. But when I look that the basic philosophy of divide, this which is between the people on the basis of caste system, what you see in India, what's going on in Kashmir, killings, and on the basis of only one thing, that they have different religion, or the caste, they have different caste. And this should be first addressed to before you can have a meaningful dialogue with each other. And something has to happen to this conflict in Kashmir. As far I know, Musharraf and Rajpai were quite near it. I don't know what went wrong. But that type of solution might be the right way to please the people. But it's very important that people who are living in Kashmir must be involved. And naturally, both governments must be involved. But sanity must prevail. For example, there are so many fields in which we stand to gain if we are doing have peace with each other. But unfortunately, I don't see those signs in India. And then, of course, there's a reaction which I think from Pakistan also. But India, as a bigger brother, has to make some good steps to make it possible, Pakistan and India, to be friends. There's no possibility, one should forget it, that Pakistan and India will become one state. It will never happen. What will happen is that if we are fair and we have try to understand the situation and we do some give and take, both nations could be friends, and that will make the people of India and Pakistan prosperous and happy. And look how much problem even India, with us all present situation in which they are having a good economic boom, still great mass of people, they're poor, they're suffering. Same is true of Pakistan also, really. There are lots of people who are very rich, but there are lots of people who are very poor. So both nations can help each other. And at this time, for example, as a doctor, I have a great appreciation of the Indian pharmaceutical industry, because they are making medicines on a very reasonable price. And in the past, I've seen there were people who used the health service in India. And when I was a student, it was not at that time very different. Pakistan's situation was better and advanced. But recently, India has made a lot of progress. And this sort of thing, we can share, help each other, and especially in the advanced surgery like transplant surgery and cancer. We can work together. We can be useful to each other. After all, we are brothers. It's the same brotherhood should prevail rather than animosity and hate.
I think on that note, I would like to end, and I would like to thank you for your time that you gave to Sights and Sounds of Pakistan. Allah Hafiz.
Thank you.